Penguin Random House Audio presents The Lost Boy of Santa Chionia, a novel by Juliet Grames. Read for you by Lisa Flanagan with a note read by the author. This book is dedicated to its grandparents, Nancy L. and Paul V. Oliver, Linda D. C. and Michael F. Grames, who among them gave me the blood and breath to write it. La disperazione più grave che possa impadronirsi d'una società è il dubbio che vivere rettamente sia inutile. The deepest despair that can take hold of a society is the fear that living honestly is futile. Corrado Alvaro. Part 1. Where is Leo Romeo? 1. My father used to tell me that growing up meant understanding who was at fault wasn't what mattered. What mattered was who had to pay the consequences. Some people never grow up, Francesca, he'd say. And when I remember his words, I still hear his voice. A nasal baritone one might not expect from such a large man. Some people grow old still pointing their fingers or waiting for justice to bring down its hammer. But finding a culpable party doesn't fix a problem. A grown-up is someone who knows when to take action and who knows how to manage consequences. I inherited my father's fondness for aphorisms. I scrutinize myself through their lenses even if I don't entirely subscribe to the aphorisms themselves. I've often wondered, for example, if my father's brand of grown-up ever puts away the guilt they accrue for those consequences they somehow know how to manage. I've been plagued of late with the urge to tell the story of the year I grew up, the story of what happened in Santa Chionia that winter of 1960 to 1961, when I was 27 years old. I was a bluestocking with big dreams for building a better world, one needy child at a time. My training had prepared me to weather many forms of calamity, but not, it turned out, evidence of cold-blooded murder. When the time came for that, I had to wing it. I've waited almost too long to make a record of these events, in part because I have been haunted by my role in them. I could have taken the true story of the lost boy of Santa Chionia to the grave, the way so many good Calabrian women have taken their dirty secrets. Women like Chica Casile, like Emilia Volontà, like Donna Adelina Alvaro. But I am not a good Calabrian woman. I'm an American. And we Americans, culturally denatured as we are accused of being, sometimes struggle with concepts like honor and tradition. I've decided I'd rather dishonor myself and come clean, now that the price of the truth is mine alone to pay. Back in the autumn of 1960, there was a village named Santa Chionia nestled in the remote heart of the Aspromonte Massif in southern Calabria. The catastrophic flood that would exhume an unidentified skeleton and rewrite the village's fate began on October 11th. 6 weeks after I arrived with my nursery school charter and my relentless idealism. The village flooded every year, my landlady told me, ever since the Saracens and the Greeks had battled each other for the fertile valleys below. October would come and the rain would slalom through the streets for a few soggy, burbling days, topping up the summer empty cistern and causing the mountain to bloom with mushrooms. For 900 years this battle-hardened people had battened down for the ordeal, and then cleaned up when the storm had passed. Life went on as life always did, unless it didn't. But something had changed after the war. The weather patterns, like a few other things, had taken a turn for the worse. The autumn rains no longer glided harmlessly through the village, but boiled into landslides, sluicing through stone walls, rocking foundations in their mortar sockets like teeth in a geriatric shepherd's loose gums. The day the rain began, I had been impressed by its volume. It became annoying on the second day, as it settled into unbailable puddles and the smell of unemptiable chamber pots permeated the kitchen. It had taken me daughter of privilege, 3 days to understand that the rain was terrifying, that help was not coming, that help could not get here. "You see what it's like now," my landlady Chica said as the flood roared down the packed dirt alley, ricocheting off residences before bursting through the city wall and plunging into the ravine. "It's because of your American bombs," she explained. "You knocked down one of the cliffs that used to hold back the floodwaters." Chica Kazile was a somewhat insane, generally disagreeable woman of approximately 5 feet in height, who wore her steel-gray hair in a short, masculine pompadour. No one else remembered the Americans bombing this part of the Aspromonte, but Chica relished being offended by me and my large-footed, immodest Yankee ways, and I recognized it was within my power to bestow a small joy on her dingy, combative little life by letting her. After 4 days of being locked together in a fug of increasingly personal aromas, Chica and I had managed to suppress our mutual antipathy and to pass the time together. Night and day had been suspended in the interminable pounding and the howling half-dark, and I felt I might be going mad. We sat with a pine sap lamp burning between us in her second-floor salon, redolent with the wet dog smell of rennet. Even over that I caught the oily scent of Chica's scalp, peachily visible in the space between her rather far-flung follicles. We stared perversely out her house's single-glass window as if we were watching the evening news. Not that Chica had ever imagined such an object as a television. The glass creaked in the window frame. The roof of old Gerasimo's house below us, only 40 feet away, was invisible, except when the wind blew through so fiercely that it cut open the wall of water. "What if roofs collapse?" I was picturing the decrepitude of Santa Chionia's lower alleys. "If this goes on much longer, people will die." "Of course they will die. How could they not?" Chica shouted over the clobbering of the rain. "Maybe we will all die this time." Technically, it was the second time in my 27 years that death had breathed down my neck, but I'd been unconscious the first time, and so had lacked the interval for end-of-life introspection that being caught in an ongoing natural disaster afforded me. I found myself disappointingly unphilosophical about the whole thing. This might be the end of my story. A Barnard grad from Pennsylvania washed away by a flood that everyone should have been able to predict was coming. I thought of the thousands of hours I'd apparently wasted on personal refinement so that I could go out into the world and make something of myself. On my doctoral studies in Oxford and Venice, on language study and posture training and calisthenics, in hopes that a more elegant package might make me likable. I had never felt less elegant or less liked than I did sitting in that cheese larder with Chica, my skin rashing against undergarments stiff with 4 days' imprisonment. I tried hard to convince myself that I didn't regret leaving behind my embassy job in Rome. Cushy Rome with its aqueducts, just one of which would have been pretty useful up in the Aspromonte right then. In the face of my incipient demise, my rationale for devoting my life to charity work looked pretty flimsy. I thought angrily about how I had never had a chance to be a mom. Well, that was out of my control. But I wished I hadn't dropped out of my history doctorate. I might have been an underpaid but much less irrigated junior professor by now. At the very least, I wished I'd had a chance to make some kind of impact here in Santa Chionia, if this whole adventure was going to cost me my life. To not die ingloriously and without struggle, as the poet would have said, but to have managed to do some great thing. I had to be brave, for my elderly landlady's sake, if nothing else. I smiled at Chica, doing my best to keep my terror out of my teeth. "I'm grateful to be sheltering with you here." Chica scowled at me. "It wasn't my idea," she said. And I laughed as if I thought she was kidding. When the sky cleared, the flood of 1960 only left behind one corpse, and it had already been dead a long time. An enigma. Nothing but bones, beginning with a femur I watched 2 boys pull from the rubble of the destroyed post office on Monday, October 17th. It was not uncommon to find a femur among the shrubs, for the feral white cows that clambered over the mountain footpaths were clumsy and often plummeted to their deaths in the ravine. But this was not a cow femur. Even I, city girl, knew by some
Sample complete. Ready to continue?